after I learned these strategies and my life improved, my grades improved, everything in my life got better, I got really upset, actually. I was like, this is so unfair. There were simple things I could have been doing this whole entire time that would have made things a whole lot easier. I didn't have to struggle. I didn't have to stress. I didn't have to suffer. And the other thing I was feeling besides just angry about it was, wow, I got to show other people how to do this. And I don't talk about this a lot, but how I ended up teaching it was
Jim Kwik, how are you today?
I'm doing outstanding, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it is incredible. I cannot believe I'm in your book room here.
Yeah, this is when people hear my story, they would be surprised if I, read a book, much less wrote a book. I used to have this fear, kind of phobia of books because it took me 3 years longer just to learn how to read with my brain injury as a child, and I would always get nervous around books. I think it became one of those things where you pass around the book as a child and you get like nervous because you have to read out loud because I couldn't do it. So yeah, now I love libraries.
I want to dive into that for sure. But first, you're Jim Kwik. You have millions of people that watch your videos, your YouTube channel, your podcast. You have trained hundreds of thousands of students at this point, kids and adults, into how to use their brain. You've taught celebrities. In fact, I saw the infamous picture walking up here that I'd love to get a picture with you by later.
Yeah. Regarding
the X-Men and your adventure there that I want to dive into. And you've just done so many incredible things, and you've been an inspiration to me and so many other people I know. But the story didn't start that way. It was far different. You were a child, and I think other children and people can relate. I know I certainly can. I still to this day have a hard time learning things as fast as others. But you had something happen to you when you were young that really stuck out to me. And I think it's only fair to start there to really set up your story.
Sure. My inspiration came out of desperation, you could say. As I alluded to, when I was 5 years old in school, in elementary school, I had a very bad fall and I had a traumatic brain injury. And after that, I was rushed to the emergency room and don't have a lot of memories around that time, but my parents said I was never really the same. Where before I was very curious, very energized, very playful, I became very shut down. And where it really showed up was in school. I had poor focus, poor memory. It took me an extra few years just to learn how to read. I was teased a lot for it. I remember when I was 9 years old, I was struggling and a teacher came to my defense, but all I remember her saying, she pointed to me and said, "That's the boy with the broken brain." And that label, it kind of became my limit. Every single time I wasn't picked for sports or did well in school, which was very often, I would always say, "Oh, because I have the broken brain." That became my self-talk. And so I learned ways to compensate over the years and, to go from below normal to some people, say above. And I became my passion. My passion became learning, and I fell in love with my brain. And now my purpose is teaching other people how to learn better, how to focus, how to remember, how to read faster, basically to level up their learning so they can level up their own life. I want to build a better, brighter world. And so our mission is no brain left behind.
Yeah, the mission is unbelievable. And as I told you earlier, that I'm a student of yours, and so is my daughter, Morgan. And
nice.
She has a question for you that I'll get into in a little bit. I asked her last night. I'm like, what should I ask Jim?
Oh, that's
so yeah. So
how old?
She's 11.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, and my 9-year-old watches as well. So it's
okay.
It's been
what
really
what
cool.
an advantage. I wish I was exposed to a lot of the content. I'm a big fan of a lot of the guests that you've had on your stage and also in your podcast, and just having access to that knowledge early on.
It's incredible.
That would have been a complete game changer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to get into why don't schools teach more of that?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
But first I want to just kind of back up a little bit, because what I found fascinating, somewhat ironic, is your love for superheroes. And when you stood on that chair when you were in school,
mm-hmm.
when you fell, you're actually looking to see if you can view a fireman.
Yeah. I grew up outside of New York City in Westchester, New York, and we were a block away from a firehouse. And so I was always enamored by firefighters. You know, for me, they were modern day superheroes. They had their uniforms. They ran towards danger where most people are running away from danger. They offered people real help and real hope. And yeah, so for me, I just really enamored. I used to have fire truck, you know, like all the toys and everything. So yeah, I believe that we all need people to inspire us to be able to, you know, that shows us that one person can make a difference. And yeah, that was actually what happened. I heard these sirens outside in kindergarten class, and we couldn't see outside the window because, you know, we're 5 years old. So we all went to grab our chairs from our desks and bring them to the windowsill. And I took a bad fall into an iron grate kind of radiator. And yeah, even thinking about it is just like a little it gets me a little bit unnerved. But yeah, that's what I wanted to see. And so I'm very, I believe we all have this superhero potential inside of us.
And then what I found fascinating about your story, it's not like you just had these issues of learning in grade school. You actually had them in high school and then throughout college as well.
It was at least like 13, 14 years straight. You know, I would work hard because that was, you know, really one of the traits, you know, I got from my parents. They're very disciplined and they worked hard and very kind. But I wouldn't get the results. I would work 3 times harder than people around me. And it was tough. You know, it really made me feel like I wasn't enough, that there was something wrong with me. I would do a book report, but if a teacher asked me to present in front of the class, I was so nervous. I was phobic of public speaking. And I would lie, and I would actually take the 0 instead of actually doing it because I was so frightened. And the universe has a sense of humor, right? My 2 biggest challenges growing up were learning and public speaking, and
Right.
that's all I do for a living. And so, but I do believe our struggles can become strengths. You know, I imagine, you know, with your story, and we were talking before, you know, we started recording, that, you know, sometimes adversity can be an advantage, right? Sometimes we have to go through
100%.
difficulty to, you know, to be able to develop ourselves.
Yeah, I used to not be able to speak. I had such a horrible stutter, and I was terrified of going in front of anyone. In 7th or 8th grade, I remember I had a part in the play. I still remember my name. It was Seymour Cash in this play. And I was a Hollywood producer in the play, and I had like 5 lines, and I was mortified because the spotlights are on you. You're ready to go. And it is humorous because I built a company and grew it, and how I got decent at public speaking was just getting it up in front of everyone.
Right.
And gradually over time, as my employee base grew, I didn't notice. And then I'd speak at events and it was nothing.
Right.
It's just
Interesting.
incredible. Yeah.
That it just started growing from like, you know, 100 to 200 to 300 to 800, all those people.
And then all of a sudden, like after you get past a certain number, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Right.
Because now you do these events with like 1,000+ people, and it's just, do you get nervous at all?
No, I get really energized from it. It's like,
amazing.
it's the opposite. It's so interesting because of where I came from to be able to stand in front of people and get energized. And I think it's because I learned a while ago, it's not about me. It's about them. It's about teaching them or being a funnel for information.
Yeah.
So I'm here to get them to learn, but I'm not the one that is necessarily teaching. I'm the one that is funneling this information through me to the audience.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's why we're here, is to be able, because, you know, like if somebody gives you $1 and you give them $1, not much changes. But if you share a new idea or some kind of inspiration with somebody and they share an idea, and all of a sudden you have brand new ideas and new levels of inspiration, and then you could really create some big change. Yeah.
Do you think your parents coming, being immigrants, coming here made a big difference for you in the sense of how to deal with adversity? And what are some of the things that they told you as you were going through this as a child?
Yeah, my dad came here when he was 13. He unfortunately lost both of his parents.
Sorry.
And so they couldn't afford. He had 2 other siblings. They couldn't afford to feed him and everything. So he came here to live with his aunt. Didn't speak the language, and just had the normal challenges of adapting and everything. My mother lived in the back of a laundromat that her parents worked at. And so, again, didn't speak the language. And so that was a little bit of a barrier. But because of it, we really prioritized family. We prioritized hard work. I had my paper route because we didn't have a lot of access. We didn't have necessarily the education or the money or the network or anything. But I wanted to work hard. So I used to read the comics. That's how I taught myself how to read. And then the newspaper comics, I saw an ad there about it in newspaper, delivery boy, and I took it and started delivering it 3 years probably earlier than I was legally supposed to be able to do. But it was just my parents really, they're not the wealthiest people, more spiritual, or the most health conscious, or probably never read a self-development book or took a yoga class or meditate, but they're just really kind, good people. I believe the life we live are the lessons we teach other people. And they were just my original superheroes, the ones I looked up to. And so they always really encouraged us, me and my siblings, to be able to work hard and just be kind, always learn. And, good things will happen.
Yeah. I love that. I love that story. And I think that is an ingredient to you overcoming that adversity. But another ingredient I know happened when you were in college and you went to your friend's house.
Yeah, I was a freshman in college, and I thought freshman meant I could make a fresh start. So I took all these classes, and I was so excited to show the world and make my parents proud. And I did worse, and because college is so much more difficult because you're spending so much less time in school and more is on your own responsibility. And so I was ready to quit because I didn't have the money even to be in school. And so a friend said, "Hey, before you make this big decision, why don't you get some perspective?" And I think it's important for us every once in a while to get some new perspective, to change the people we're with or change the place that we're in and the environment. And so I visit him and his family one weekend, and the father is walking me around his property and says, "Well, how's school?" Which is the worst question you could ask me. And I'm 18 years old, very insecure, and I break down in front of this complete stranger, which is very rare, but I had so much emotional buildup, and tell my whole story about broken brain and ready to quit school. And then he was like, why are you in school? What do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do you want to have? What do you want to share? And, I ended up writing it down for him, on a piece of paper. I make this bucket list. And when I'm done, I start folding it to put in my pocket, and he rips it out of my hand and he starts reading my dreams. And I start freaking out, honestly, because I wasn't expecting him to, because I think all of us are concerned about other people's opinions about them, being judged by people. And when he looks at it, when he's done, he says, "You're this close to everything on this list." And if you're not watching on video, I'm spreading my index fingers about a foot apart. And I'm like, no way, give me 10 lifetimes. I'm not going to crack that list. And he takes his fingers and he puts them to the side of my head, meaning what's in between is the key, the bridge. And he takes me into a room I've never seen before. It's wall to wall, ceiling to floor, covered in books, and I never been in a library in somebody's home before. And, like this, yeah, I've never, I don't think there are a lot of videos of me in this library here, if you're watching this on video. So this is really amazing. I feel very much at home. I wish I could have osmosis and all of it. I would sleep in a room like this now, but back then it was very intimidating. But he starts to grab books and hand them to me. And there were these early personal growth books, and, Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking, Psycho-Cybernetics, Napoleon Hill, Dale Carnegie, like all these, icons, and some very early, and also some biographies of some incredible men and women. And he makes me commit to reading one book a week, and that those books ended up changing my life. If people see photos of me with Oprah or Elon or Bill Gates or any of these people, we bonded over books. And that's that. There's no magic behind it. It's just leaders or readers, and I'm very passionate about if somebody has decades of experience and they put into a book, and you could sit down in a few days and read that book. You could download decades into days, and I just think it's a huge advantage to learn from other people's experience. Same as listening to podcasts.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that story. When you were describing it, you don't say, or I haven't heard you say, I'm sure you've said it sometime. What was on that list? What were a few things that were on there?
Yeah. There were a lot of things on that list were things I wanted to do for my parents. Things that they couldn't afford, or even if they had the means, they wouldn't do for themselves, because they just, like taking them on trips and doing things that it's easy to take for granted. And that was the leverage, honestly, because when he first presented me with all these books, I was like, I can't do this. I can't even keep up with my schoolwork. But when he started reading those things out loud, it provided a purpose. And I think it's so important for us to be able to realize why we do what we do, that if anyone who's listening has trouble with motivation or motivating other people, I think reasons reap results. When people could feel the benefit that will come from following through, or they feel maybe the pain that comes from not following through, I think it gives us some drive. And so I'm always looking for that in myself and others. Like, I'm on this passionate pursuit of potential in other people. That lights me up more than anything. And but I think it's important to start with why you want to do something. Like Simon Sinek talks about, start with why.
So what you're handed these stack of books. Mm-hmm. I imagine it was pretty critical to start with the right one to start the spark.
Yeah.
What was that first book?
Yeah. So I don't know which was the first one, because I started reading. I was a very slow reader at one point, and so I would part of the reasons why I would flip through, multiple books simultaneously, like, trying to multitask, or at that early age, because I wanted to devour it, and I wouldn't eat or sleep or anything because I really couldn't keep up with my schoolwork. But I would say definitely Think and Grow Rich was very early on. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People was like a mind-blowing book for me. It was a book I would read almost every year, talk about the power of remembering people's names, and that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, and, in life and in your work. But it's amazing that all these books, they're timely, but they're also timeless. A lot of wisdom there. And so now I know the power of a book. And so now I'm just find myself writing every single day, just even if I'm not going to publish it, but I'll post it on social media or something like that, or as a tweet or somewhere.
You have an incredible amount of quotes and sayings. You're like the king of these amazing, like, one or two liners that I don't even know I know how you remember everything, because you have memory techniques to remember them, but are those all derive at least from an old book that you read or a newer book?
Yeah, I would say that all of us are, sitting or standing on shoulders of, people before us. And I just feel like a lot of this wisdom, I think we get people attracted to our work because we make neuroscience and this and possibly kind of accessible for, the everyday person. I don't have like a PhD or a master's, or I'm not a psychologist or anything that ends with an ist at all. But I just, I'm just sharing my own personal experience. And then because we have students, as you mentioned, all around the world in every country, we get a lot of feedback. But, I feed my mind constantly. There's not a day that goes by that I don't read. But then I also schedule time just to ponder. I feel like sometimes when we're going through the day, we don't schedule a white space. And I think that's so important for all your listeners, because if they're listening to this, then they're achievers, right? They know for their business to grow, or their brand to grow, or their bank account to grow, that they need to grow, right? That if you could change your brain, you could change your life. If you change your brain, you could change the entire world. But it takes constant improvement. I have this thing of I always be learning, chapter 1. But I think the faster you can learn, the faster you can earn, because knowledge today is not only power. The right knowledge is profit. Right. And so, yes, I come up with a lot of ideas, but it's only because I just practice the things that I teach. And so I think that I'm more concerned with feeding my mind each day than I am even feeding my body, and whatever you nourish tends to flourish. And
there you go.
There you go. Just make these up. But we have to stand guard to our mind. And, sometimes we just let anything come in. And I just think it's so important that there's a quote in Limitless from a French philosopher, and he says, "Life is the C between B and D. B is birth, D is death. Life C is choice." And I do believe we always have a choice on what to focus on, what things mean, how we're going to feel about something, and what we're going to do at any given time. And those choices add up, and they create, our life. And I think it's important to remind everybody that we have agencies, that we shouldn't always give. It's so easy to give up our power to something on the outside and say, okay, I'll feel good if the weather's like this, or I'll feel good if this person treats me this way. And no judgment, but I just feel like that, that we want to be this metaphor I talk about being a thermostat, not a thermometer. Thermometer just reacts to everything. I mean, sometimes we react to the economy or politics or stuff, but a thermostat doesn't react. It gauges the environment, but then it sets a goal, right? It sets a temperature, it sets a vision, and the environment reacts to it. And I think that for the most part, we have more power and influence than we think we do, that we're smarter and we're stronger than we think. And sometimes it takes life's conditions to be able to reveal, that.
Yeah. And the irony is, I think life rewards uniqueness versus reactiveness.
I would second that for sure. I think nowadays, like, the future belongs a lot to the creators. Where a lot of even jobs are being outsourced, they're being automated, or artificial intelligence. What's not is what's truly limitless. There's no limit to our creativity. There's no limit to our ability to solve problems. There's no limit to our imagination. There's no limit to our ability to come together, and make positive change. And so, we live in exciting times. Whoever's listening to this, like, you are the greatest project you're ever going to get to work on. So you need to take time and make time to create magic.
Yeah, no, that's right on. You said something earlier about giving yourself time to just think and ponder. And what I find interesting, and I want to get into the villains in a few minutes from your book, but my son's 9 years old, and I'm not exaggerating. If he doesn't have something to do for 2 minutes, he says he's bored. And I said, just daydream, just stare out the window and think of something. And that thought is so tough for him to grasp because he's had constant attention. Some of it it's on me, right? Like, he's not getting a phone, he's not getting devices, he's not getting that attention unless I'm giving it to him in those ways. But I find it very hard for kids to be able to just relax and daydream and think and visualize and think about things. And I wonder what happens down the line, because we haven't seen generations come from this constant connectedness.
Right. Yeah, we live in and I'm not anti-technology. Technology allows this to happen. For us to be able to connect and be able to educate or entertain or empower people that we will never meet. But I think technology is a tool for us to use. But if it's using us, then we become the tool. And I don't think that's the goal. I think my general feeling for it, because I get this question a lot about, eventually these devices are going to be implanted in our minds. And, I probably wouldn't be an early adopter to that. Like, I want to, just like, we have cars that could take us from here to there, or elevator. I always preferred, if I can, to exercise, my body or my mind, to do it more organically. But yeah, certainly with this generation, they'll never know what it, back in college, I didn't have access to the internet, right? And there was no email or anything else like that. And so I would imagine right now there's these, you mentioned some of these digital kind of villains, if you will, that it just intensifies things. Like, we live in an environment that hasn't caused these challenges, but it's amplified a lot of our distraction, or a lot of our overload, a lot of our kind of, like, it takes time to think, and it takes energy to think and to ponder. And sometimes if the devices are doing the thinking for us through algorithms, or they're telling you, hey, this is what you should be eating, or this is what we recommend, or this is like the news, and it's kind of filtering out things, and we don't get to use our critical thinking and be logical and rational. And so I feel like those muscles aren't getting flexed as much, and they're not getting used. And so I would say use it or lose it. And so with kids, it's this healthy some people call it a balance. I would call it more of a harmony, trying to figure out, no judgment, just finding out what works for everybody. But I would always say, never let a tool just do all the work for you, because, I'd want to exercise my mind, and so I want to keep it active, and that's how we keep it fit and help it like it's kind of like if you're born and like, or you hit the age where you could drive and you were given a car, and it's like your car, free, clear, but you had that car the rest of your life and you couldn't change it. How well would you take care of that car, right? And well, we're born with this vehicle called our body, which has a brain also as part of it. And I feel like we self-care is so important now, making sure we upgrade it and take care of it. And so kids growing up, yes, a lot of them feel like they're driven to distraction because every ring, ping, ding, app notification, social media alert, like, share, comment, it's just this, big dopamine flood that maybe is driving us to be distracted. And that's why I think it's important for kids and adults, because adults are just, big kids, to have time to play, to have time to ponder, to schedule white space, to be able to think, especially adults, because that's our value in the marketplace, our ability to solve problems, our ability to be creative, our ability to make good decisions. But I feel like they only do it like when they have to, or in between things, as opposed to really scheduling time when they're most alert and just pondering a question, right? Or something for their business, something for their life.
Yeah, one of the action items you have in the book is just to memorize someone's phone number, which back in the day, that's all you had. You had the landlines, and then you just had to remember a phone number. You get someone's phone number on a piece of paper. There's no exchanging of contacts digitally.
Yeah.
And it's just so funny to think about that. Another story, I was just laughing because it just hit me like a ton of bricks. It was my honeymoon in 2008. I'm driving with my wife. We're in Europe. Never been even out of the country except like maybe Mexico. Mm-hmm. And I'm like 30 years old or so. And we go to Saint-Tropez from Nice. We rent this smart car that, I'm 6'2", and we're in this little smart car. She falls asleep on the way back. There's no navigation. It's getting dark, and all I saw is the ocean. And I'm like, okay, I have no clue where I'm at. I'm like an hour and a half from our hotel. No way to get it. Don't speak French at all. And like, how do I get back? And it was, I had many twists and turns, me trying to wake her up, like, Heather, get up, you got to help me here. She's not very directionally challenged. She has many good qualities, but that's not one of them. And it was just crazy. And I just think of that because I had to rely on like, okay, where's the sun setting? Where's the ocean? How do I get back to this? Because I knew as long as I followed the ocean in some manner, I would get back, because we were staying pretty close to it. It's just really interesting, because now it'd be like, why would you do that? You can just look on your phone and go to Google Maps and find directions. So. You don't even have to have that critical thinking.
Yeah. There have been studies done even in London where they have the taxi drivers, their brains are actually wired different, and they're denser in different parts of their brains.
They have to memorize it, right? Yeah. They have to go to school for that.
Yeah, very much so. And so that's all. So the whole book Limitless is, and our work is just the reason why you can, redraw the borders and boundaries of what's possible is because of, the science of our brain. It's like neuroplasticity, saying that our brain adapts. It's the ultimate adaptation machine, meaning that when it's has novelty, there's some new stimulus that our brains will actually change depending on our experience. So it could change our thoughts, it could change our habits, it could change our feelings, and we could rewire ourselves. Just like a muscle, like you give it novelty and you feed it nutrition, you give it some sleep, and it can grow stronger. Same thing with our mental muscles. And so it's an exciting time, without a doubt.
So I want to go back a bit, because I need to bridge the gap between you starting to read these books and the Jim Kwik now. What happened in between those? I know that's a loaded question. Yeah. What happened like in between those two periods?
How I ended up doing this for my I mean, I never thought growing up that I would, if someone asked me like what I would be when I grew up, it wouldn't be a
brain coach.
No. Like, I think we coined that word like a good 25 plus years ago. So what I would say is, after I learned these strategies, and my life improved, my grades improved, everything in my life got better. I got really upset, actually. I was like, This is so unfair. Look, there were simple things I could have been doing this whole entire time that would have made things a whole lot easier. I didn't have to struggle. I didn't have to stress. I didn't have to suffer. And the other thing I was feeling besides just angry about it was, wow, I got to show other people how to do this. And I don't talk about this a lot, but how I ended up teaching it was I found a classroom that wasn't being used one night when I was having these thoughts, like a Thursday night at 7, and it was empty. So I was like, next Thursday, I'm going to just put 5 or 10 people in that room and teach them some things. And then maybe afterwards, 1 or 2 of them will like to go on this journey and learn deeper. I could tutor them. And so I go home to my dorm room and I take out a piece of paper and I write with a marker. It's my first marketing. Free speed reading, memory tips, get better grades in less time.
Is this your freshman year?
This is my freshman year. And then I write the room number, Thursday, 7 o'clock. Next morning, on the way to class, I make some photocopies, put it on some, boards. Not a lot. And then fast forward to Thursday, 7 o'clock, I'm walking to this classroom hoping just 5 people showed up. And when I turn the hallway, there's a crowd of people outside the classroom. And my question was like, I was like, wow, I hope whatever's going on ends soon so I could do my thing, right? And I couldn't even get in because there's this tall guy in the doorway. And I was like, what's going on inside? And he's like, there's a speed reading class. Honestly, I said, wow, what a coincidence. Like, what are the chances there's another speed reading class in the same classroom, the same night, the same time? And I kind of pushed my way in, and it's a crowd of people there. Every seat is taken, people standing in the back. And lo and behold, no one's teaching, right? And it takes my slow brain all that time to realize why they're all there. I do a head count instead of 5 or 10 people. There's 110 people. And remember,
You're so
phobic.
terrified, yeah.
I'm phobic of public speaking. I'm 18 years old. I look really young. All right. This is like 30 years ago. And I'm wearing t-shirt shorts. There's graduate students, teaching assistants there. And I have nothing prepared to talk about, right? And my heart's beating out of my chest and I can't even breathe because I'm so terrified. So I leave because I can't even perform, right? And I can't even go back to my dorm room because my friends will just, make fun of me. So I go to this fountain and I just kind of meditate, just gonna get centered. And when I'm meditating, I hear this voice, and it's my mother's voice. And I won't tell you what she said, but it essentially is 100 people came out to learn something. You're disappointing them, you're disappointing me kind of thing. And I'm doing this walking meditation back to my dorm room and I stop and I take 1 step back to the classroom. And I noticed, Joe, that 1 step in another direction can completely change your destination in your life, or some people call it their destiny. So I go back to the classroom and I honestly, it's embarrassing as a memory expert. I don't remember what I said. It just came through me. I don't know if sometimes on stage, you just open your mouth and it's just stream of consciousness. But at the end of 2 hours, I said, hey, I don't know if I could help all of you, but I could teach you what I know in 10 hours, maybe 2 hours a week for the next 5 weeks. If you're interested, I get $30 an hour. That's what I got teaching tennis back in high school. And I'll be in the Student Center tomorrow at noon. And this is what happened. 100 people stand up and they leave. Not one person talks to me. And now I'm there, it's 10 o'clock at night, I'm in an empty classroom and I'm totally confused, like what just happened? And I'm exhausted because I'm mentally, emotionally, physically just spent. Because you ever face a fear and it just takes everything out of you. And I end up falling asleep on the carpet. And I get woken up by the class coming in the next morning, which is embarrassing. I run back home, back to my dorm room, shower, go to breakfast, go to class. 12 o'clock comes. I was like, I promised I'd be in Student Center. I go to Student Center. I hope just one person is there that believed in me. And I get there, the same crowd is there. And at the end of not even 2 hours, 71 of these students signed up for a program that didn't even exist. And at $300 a person, because I didn't even do the math, $30 an hour for times 10 hours. And because I didn't realize that the kids could go to have these ATM cards and they could just take out 300 because I didn't have that. And so now I'm not even 19 years old and I have $21,000 cash in my book bag. And, and I use that to feed my mind and really pursue my skills, knowledge, skills, and abilities. I travel around the country learning everything I can about memory, speed reading, focus, neuroscience, eventually positive psychology. And one of those, the reason why I'm here today is one of those students, she was a freshman. She read 30 books in 30 days, all on health and wellness and immune system. And she ended up saving her mom's life of like a terminal cancer. And when I heard that, I realized that if knowledge is power, then learning is our superpower. And it's a superpower we all have. And I dedicated that was 30 years ago, I dedicated my life to helping people to unleash that power. Yeah. So
that is an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. I think a lot of people could identify with taking like some of the messes in our life and turning it into our message. You know what I mean? We all go through challenges, and I think that challenges could lead to change. That that our struggles could be our superpowers, and
Yeah.
and if it's not there yet, I just feel like that there's a version of ourselves that we haven't met yet. And I think the goal is we just show up every single day until we're introduced.
And isn't it crazy? I've talked a lot about on the podcast, like the dots connecting behind you, but you can't really see them in front of you. And you taking that step, you meditating, even rewinding back, that you go to your friend's house, like here, how serendipitous all of that was to the steps to lead you to kind of where you're at, to finding your purpose to help others with your gifts that you've read from books.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really incredible.
I just got goosebumps. I call them truth bumps. So it feels right to me. I feel like that we can't. My hope is that everyone who's watching or listening to this, that they look back, that if they're going through difficult times right now, that they could look back and they could realize, even a year from now or 2 years from now or whatever amount of time in the future, that things happen the way they're supposed to. That maybe they get to a point where they're actually glad and they appreciate that things didn't work out the way they once hoped, and that's how I feel. I had 3 traumatic brain injuries, put in special classes. My mom became a special education teacher in public school system to be able to help me. I feel like the things that I was sometimes embarrassed about growing up with my learning challenges or things, situations, and I'm most proud of now.
Yeah.
And so we hear a lot about post-traumatic stress. So we don't hear a lot about post-traumatic growth, which is that I would imagine you've had this experience, maybe something you've gone through just, is really, really tough. You wouldn't wish it upon, maybe you went through something that was really, really tough and you wouldn't wish upon anybody, but, you got to a point where you wouldn't change it. Through it, maybe somebody listening, they found meaning, they found a strength, they found a mission, and it gave them purpose.
Yeah, no, that is so right on. And the irony of the story that I told earlier, with regards to me speaking, my son, who's 9, is on the autism spectrum because of speech apraxia. I mean, one of his symptoms is speech apraxia. He can't read, nor can he speak fluently yet. And so it's been a life of adversity for him since he's been 2 years old. But I think it's going to lead up to him being a very, very strong individual.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I also am a believer that adversity is a gift. And yet, like when I look at my children, it's hard to balance not removing adversity from them completely because I have the ability to give them more than I received. So I don't know if you have any advice on that, but I'd love to. To hear it.
I mean, it's been my personal experience as well that, the whole idea where we fall because it allows us to, to develop our strength, to be able to get back up. I feel like I haven't met a strong person ever that had an easy past. I can't think of one strong person that I know that had an easy past. And I feel like, that adversity certainly can be an advantage. That I think that, we have to choose our hard. You've heard other people talk about it, but it's just like, hey, being sick is hard and being fit is hard. We choose our hard. Not having money is hard and working and developing something is hard. We choose that hard. Relationships, breaking up is hard, and having a long-term it's hard also. We just have to choose what's difficult. And it's been my experience that if we just always relegate ourselves to doing the easy things in life, then that's when life gets really hard. The easy thing in life is to do nothing, is to just binge, and no judgment, because that's everyone's own prerogative and their own purpose. But if we just procrastinate and put everything off, then life gets really hard. But if we do the difficult things in life, then life gets a lot easier. So I feel like, that's why we have it. I mean, you go to the gym and you lift weights and you don't curse the weights. Some of us do, but you do it because it's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to get more fit. And, life is our event, right? Life is our conference. Every day is like our seminar, and we have problems, and these problems, help build our determination, our drive, our faith, our resilience and our grit. And so I think it's important, especially for children, to realize that, even the basis of like a growth mindset and a fixed mindset is just like, we're not rewarding people by calling them geniuses and everything. We're rewarding their discipline, or we're rewarding their effort that they're putting into something. So that way, if children, or even those you're managing or leading, if they have the difficulty, that they either say, oh, I'm either good at this or I'm not, as opposed to, rewarding their effort and their struggle. And I think that's a big lesson for all of us to learn. And it's that, it's that simple, and it's also that hard, because it's one thing to say, it's another one, when you're going through it. But I think part of this process is being kind to ourselves, realizing that, kind of like falling in love with that person in the mirror who's been through so much, but is still standing, And so whoever's struggling right now, just remember people are watching, and you inspire people with your grit, and your grace, whether they want to admit it or not. And so and asking for help, just as a reminder, is a sign of strength. I don't think anyone's an island. We all have people that are supporting us, whether we know it or not, that are maybe rooting for us, or clients that are, buying from us. So it takes a village. That's how we become limitless. Like people ask how to become limitless in a limited world. We do it together. Exactly what we're doing right now. And I think community is so important. That's why, I'm excited to speak at your event, to be able to meet, all the members there, to be able to share ideas. Like we all need somebody to encourage us, to challenge us, to cheerlead for us, to empower us. And if you haven't found that person, my recommendation is be that person for somebody else.
Yeah.
Especially be that person for yourself.
That's so right on. And I don't know why it took me 43 years to realize that if you want to help someone change, the best thing you could do is lead by example.
Oh, I like that.
And that is
Yeah.
kind of what you're saying is like you don't know who you're inspiring. You just don't.
We were talking about that and going on stage, and how you do it because you're there. You don't get nervous because as soon as you step on, you're just thinking about who you're contributing to. You never know who's in the audience. That was me, because reading these books or going to these seminars very early on when I was 18, I used to get friends to chip in like $20 to be able to get gas to go to an event 2 states away, which is difficult, because I was there drinking money or something else like that. But you never know who's in the audience, and you never know who could benefit from this. And that keeps me going. Like right now, knowing that people are listening to this around the world in different places, maybe they get one idea, or they double down on themselves and they show up, and, everything could change. But I do believe that one step in another direction, just with what I had gone through, it could change everything. So when we make one little step on like, hey, I'm going to do 10 minutes of reading today, or 10 minutes of exercise, or I'm going to spend 10 extra minutes with my kid or something like that, all of that adds up to, little things add up to big things.
Yeah. I was reading, I think it was Atomic Habits, and they were talking about like getting someone to floss. You
Right.
don't you have your floss by your toothbrush, and then you're like, okay, just floss with one tooth, which sounds ridiculous, right? You do one tooth, and you're like, that's easy. And you're like, the next day, do two teeth. And the next thing you know, you're flossing. So it's those incremental baby steps to develop habits.
Yeah, I believe consistency compounds. Little by little, a little becomes a whole lot. So even, as you've been talking about, like improving just 1% every single time, right, adds up to huge, huge changes.
Right.
And that's how winning is done. That's how transformation happens. It's just a reminder that every expert was once a beginner, right? Every professional or pro was once an amateur, right? And so big things all have small beginnings.
So I want to ask about action steps and things people should look out for, like the digital kind of detox and the digital dementia and that. And then I want to talk quickly about the things people should focus on without giving them the techniques, because we'll save refuel for that. Your courses dive into that. They're very actionable. Your book does a really good job in summarizing those and getting people started.
Yeah.
So we'll save that as a teaser, but I want to just kind of outline it. But before that, because I know I'm going to forget if I don't ask you this, your friend's dad, have you talked to him since then? Does he know who you've become?
Yeah. So this was 3 decades ago. So things, I tried to track this person down like years and years ago, and haven't been successful at it, but it's, my thing is he talked about how the life you live are the lessons you teach. Just like you were saying that you can't change anybody, but you can be an example for them. And so, for me, my promise has always been to pay it forward, to be that mentor for somebody else. Yeah. And I feel like that's, like a modern day superheroes, anybody who has a relationship with a human being, whether you're a parent, whether you're a teacher, whether you're an entrepreneur, if you could add unique value, as you talked about, and service, because everything in life, nature, everything grows, it's green and it grows, or it's has to give. It has to give back to the environment. Otherwise, it's kind of eliminated. And I feel like that's when we're happiest, when we're making an advance, and we're advancing, we're progressing, and we're also we're giving back. I think we donated all the proceeds to Limitless, hundreds of thousands of dollars to charity, to Alzheimer's research, to building schools around the world for children who have no access to education. And I think the formula is you learn to earn so you can return. It's exactly what you do with Refuel, like how you'll be able to, as a philanthropist, be able to give back. I think it's important because especially nowadays, that's what heroes do. It's just they're there for those people who are in need. And I think that's a great antidote to fear. Where a lot of people right now are really struggling with anxiety and stress. I think an antidote to anxiety, stress, and fear is contribution, putting our focus on making somebody's life, a little bit better. And, and we all do it in our unique ways. How do you invest some of your time, your talent, or your treasure to just make a difference? And it could be just calling on a neighbor who might feel lonely. It can be making food for some frontline work. It could be anything, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that's why we're here.
Well, it's just like what happened to you. I mean, you faced your fear and you had this out-of-body experience where you were able to deliver your first talk. And from that point, you just kept taking steps,
Yeah, and over time, I mean, everyone sees the end result, right? Yeah. But we don't see what's below the iceberg very often. The struggle, the embarrassment, like all the failures and the mistakes.
I say that so much. It's so true.
Yeah, so success is definitely not a straight line, nor do I think it wouldn't be interesting if it was, right? But I feel like I know you have a lot of entrepreneurs who are listening to this, as well as anybody who takes personal responsibility, for their life. And sometimes you have to feed your business until it feeds you back, right? And if you do the things that other people aren't willing to do, then you could, maybe even live a life that other people, can't.
Yeah.
But it takes work. And that's the thing. I don't know any way around it. It takes discipline. It takes hard work. It takes sacrifice. But it's not about whether it's easy. It's whether it's worth it.
Yeah, no, that's so right on. And I can fully relate to that. It was years before I took a salary in my companies.
Wow.
And in 2013, it was a bit ironic because the only funding I got, so created 2 businesses, was a convertible note from a client. And that
Wow.
note equated to the same amount of money, coincidentally, that we lost that year, which was $300,000 in 2013.
Interesting.
And in 2017, I'm so blessed to say we were ranked number 39 of the fastest growing companies on Inc.
Wow.
Had a few hundred employees, and we're a very healthy company. And I can tell you that there were so many nights of stress, of like developing literally disease on my body, like eczema,
Wow.
and
Wow.
like you don't see that side of it.
Yeah.
You just, and I only say that to say like there's so much below the iceberg that goes on, and you tend to see the outcomes, good or bad, but a lot of this stuff takes work. It's not
Yeah.
this linear path. It's not a magic pill. But that said, it's so possible. Like if I was able to do this, and you were able to do what you do, not speaking for you, but like people are limitless. I think it's a limited world at all. Like there's so much you could do.
There's so much abundance that's out there. We talk about it on our podcast, like about exponential thinking and how we live in a world that, I mean, we have more access to the world's information in our pockets than Clinton had access to when he was president. I mean, going back to what you were saying, what's below the surface, like I went for a run this morning. That's the two things I have to do. I have to run and read every day, with the name like Kwik. I have to do it pretty fast also. But I was going past this lake and there were these ducks, and it's kind of like that duck on the water, right? It could be all calm on the surface, but underneath it could be pedaling like really, really fast. And we don't always see that. But and that's one of the things on social media, and I love social media, and it's challenging. Sometimes we develop this kind of digital depression where we're always kind of comparing ourselves to everybody else's life and then the highlight trailer. And the truth is sometimes, it's greener where you water it. And sometimes it's greener on Instagram because of the filter they're using, or there's a lot of artificial turf that's out there. And I would say that comparison and envy is the thief of joy. And I'm just saying you don't have to compare yourself to anyone else other than we know this about, the best potential of our own self or the person we were yesterday. And I think it's so important for us to do things on our own timeline. And it liberates us from the, a lot of people don't know their purpose. And I would say that a lot of us, you might, but sometimes it's buried under a pile of other people's expectations and opinions about ourselves.
I think that's a great segue into what I wanted to talk about, which is what should people watch out for? Like, what are these digital villains or villains in general?
Yeah. So I was saying that there are four forces that are out there driven by technology that we talk about in Limitless that actually is compromising our productivity, our performance, even our profitability and our prosperity. And peace of mind, frankly. I tend to alliterate everything, so it's a lot of P's. But so really quickly, so these are like the four horsemen of the mental apocalypse. Number one is digital deluge. It's a term that I coined, basically talking about information overwhelm, right? Information anxiety is a real health condition, higher blood pressure, compression of leisure time, more sleeplessness. And it's like taking a sip of water out of a fire hose. So that's why I always teach people how to read faster or learn faster, because I think it's the most important skill today. I know we'll be talking about that in depth at your event, and even people's strategies to be able to accelerate their learning. I think if there's one skill to master, it's our ability to learn rapidly. Like an individual or a team's ability to learn rapidly and translate that learning into action is the ultimate competitive advantage. Second supervillain besides digital deluge is digital distraction. Like how do you maintain your focus and your concentration to get things done? You read a page in a book and you forget what you just read because your mind is wandering, or you're on Zoom, or you just your attention is going elsewhere. So techniques to hone your concentration. And then digital dementia, which you mentioned about phone numbers. I mean, how many phone numbers do we all know growing up? Like all of them, unless you were born, more recently. But how many phone numbers do we know now? We know like one or two or three memorized. And not that you want to memorize 500 phone numbers, but it should be concerning we've lost the ability to remember one, or a PIN number, or a passcode, or something we were going to say, or something somebody told us, or an appointment, or someone's name. I believe two of the most costly words in business are I forgot. I forgot to do it. I forgot to bring it. I forgot that conversation. I forgot that meeting. I forgot that name. And then finally, the fourth one is digital deduction. It's a term that I coined basically saying that because of technology is doing all the thinking for us, is telling us what to buy and what to eat and what to think. And, thinking, it takes a lot of cognitive energy. And so that's why so few people actually indulge in it, because they're tired all the time. They have mental fog, or, they have brain fatigue. And they're like looking at a menu at the end of the day, and they can't even order something for dinner because they're just so spent. And so we teach people, basics in critical thinking, good decision making, problem solving abilities. And that's really, what I think should have been taught back in school. School taught us what to learn, what to focus on, what to remember, what to study, what to think, but not how to remember, how to focus, how to study, how to think, how to learn better. And so there's no Focus 101 back in school, or Retention 101. And so that's my passion through our videos, through our podcasts, through our books, is teaching people this thing called meta learning how to learn.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I've been learning from you in Limitless, and I'd love to touch on some of those things now. So when you're teaching these courses, or you're getting feedback,
Yeah.
what are some of the top skills that people should have to train their brain?
Yeah. So there's two different parts. There's the hardware and the software. So a lot of what you mentioned, our courses and our podcast, teaches the software on how to remember names and how to read faster, how to focus and concentrate. And you can learn great programming, but you have to also upgrade the hardware also. So that's really the amazing thing, right? This 3-pound matter between our ears called our brain. So 10 of my favorite things to focus on. So we know that 1/3 of your memory and your brain's potential is predetermined by genetics and biology, and 2/3 is in our control, at least 2/3. Some people would say 100% is in our control, according to epigenetics and everything. So 10 quick things I would say, and people could write this down. I would encourage everyone to actually rate themselves, maybe do a quick assessment, 0 to 10, how much time and energy they're putting towards it. Number 1 is a good brain diet, because what you eat matters, especially for your gray matter. So some of my favorite brain foods are like avocados and blueberries, broccoli, olive oil. If your diet allows eggs, the choline in eggs is good for cognitive health. Green leafy vegetables like kale and spinach. If you eat fish, sardines, and wild salmon, your brain is mostly fat, so those fish oils. Turmeric helps to lower inflammation in your body and your brain.
Was this experimentation? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I want to understand, like, how'd you come up with that list?
So this is actually science-based. So it's a whole area of science we talk about in the book called neuronutrition, that your brain is only 2% of your body mass, but it requires 20% of the nutrients. So your brain actually requires different nutrients than the rest of your physical body. Obviously, your brain is part of your body. And so, like, for example, the vitamin E in walnuts is very neuroprotective, right? It's a great antioxidant for your brain. Dark chocolate is wonderful for your brain. Not milk chocolate or high sugar, but generally what's good for your mood is going to be good for your mind. And so on a scale of 0 to 10, people can rate themselves, how good is their diet? Because what we matters, to our brain. It literally becomes us, right? And on the opposite side of the spectrum, processed food, fried food, sugar, really messes with our brain, something fierce. So 0 to 10. Number 2, I got this from Dr. Daniel Amen, who's a famous brain doctor. Killing ants, automatic negative thoughts is because I believe your brain is like a supercomputer, and your self-talk is a program it will run. So if you tell yourself, I'm not good at remembering people's names, you won't remember the name of the next person you meet because you program your supercomputer not to. So on a scale of 0 to 10, how positive, encouraging, empowering are your thoughts? Number 3, exercise. And that's probably the most well-documented. What's good for your heart is going to be good for your head. When you move your body, when your body moves, your brain grooves in new ways. You create brain-derived neurotropic factors, BDNF, which is like fertilizer for neuroplasticity. And I don't mean just like doing SoulCycle or Pilates 3 times a week. I mean moving throughout the day. We live in a very sedentary lifestyle. We're all behind screens. People don't know if they're working from home or they're living at work, and it can be very stationary. So we need to, the primary reason we have a brain is to control our movement. So move all day. So on a scale of 0 to 10. Brain nutrients, I'll throw that in there. I'm not an expert on this. I'm not a nutritionist, so talk to your functional medicine doctor. But, having a profile done to see what nutrients you might be lacking, because you can learn a great technique on speed reading. But if you're lacking certain like B vitamins or omega-3s, you're not going to perform as well, right? So you need to take care of that hardware. So you might need to supplement. I always prefer getting it from food, but, if you can't get it through food, get it through supplementation. And then number 5 is a positive peer group. Highly recommend this because it's not just your neurological networks or your biological networks. It's often our social networks. Who you spend time with is who you become, right? And that's why I think it's great that everyone who's listening to this, they're part of your community. They could connect with you on YouTube, through social media, through your live events, and realize that we're not in it by ourselves. And we go further when we're doing it together. And we tend to, who you spend time with is who you become. That's why these gatherings are so important, because we start adapting. I always tell people to watch, WATCH. I use a lot of acronyms. W is your words, A are your actions, T are your thoughts, C is your character, H are your habits. And we start adapting and imitating those people around us, using their words, their actions, thinking their thoughts, becoming, their integrity or their character, and adopting their habits, right? And so scale of 0 to 10, how positive and encouraging is your peer group? And we could always create our own masterminds, right? Create our own book clubs, create our own people that are just not energy vampires, And then we all have people in our lives, friends and family, that sometimes kind of steal our energy. And I would just say that, you could love them and also choose your peers. Another one, number 6, I would say clean environment. So on a scale of 0 to 10, your brain loves a clean environment because your external world is a reflection of your internal world. So when you clean, you make your bed, you clean your desktop, you have clarity of thought. Number 7, sleep. I mean, can we talk about this? Like, how many people are listening to this that have trouble sleeping? They have trouble staying asleep. And it's so important to keep your brain healthy, right? That's where you consolidate short to long-term memory. So if you have long-term memory issues, check your sleep. It's where you clean out beta amyloid plaque that could lead to Alzheimer's or dementia. It's where you dream. And, if you're not getting that good deep sleep or your REM sleep, you're not going to be able to get that restorative thing for your mind and your body. So on a scale of 0 to 10, we've done like 10 episodes on optimizing your sleep on our podcast. And I think it's so important because you can do everything else. Sleep is probably the number one brain hack, if you will. And then finally, 8, 9, and 10. 8, protect your brain. I had 3 traumatic brain injuries before the age of 12. So wear a helmet. Don't let your kids do extreme sports if they could prevent it, because your brain is it's resilient, but it's also very fragile. Number 9 is new learnings, and I'm preaching to the choir because anyone who's listening or watching this, they love to learn. But that's how you create new connections. And the faster you can learn, the faster you can earn. And it actually helps you live longer. There was a study done on nuns. They called it aging with grace. They were living 80, 90 and above, and they said their longevity was because of part of it was their emotional faith and gratitude, but the other half, they were lifelong learners. And because of it, added years to their life and life to their years, or good years. And then finally, the big one, stress management. Chronic stress has been shown to actually shrink the human brain. It puts you in fight or flight or freeze. And that's not the place you want to study in. It's not the place you're going to be the best parent in. It's not the place that you're going to do well in sales meetings, right? And so, spending time getting in that parasympathetic rest and digest. 0 to 10, how well are you coping with stress? And what are you doing? Like, my favorite thing is to meditate. Some people like to work out. Some people go, get some body work or have some red wine or something. But we need to be able to have a way to systematically reduce the stress that builds up just through day-to-day living. So those are just 10 quick tips on just how to upgrade your brain, because we upgrade everything. We upgrade our cameras, we upgrade our phones, we upgrade all this technology, our computers and our software and our apps, but we don't upgrade the most important tool that does everything for us, right?
So thanks for sharing those. I think every one of them are spot on. And I know you've tested those over time. And
Yeah.
And that's great. When you're thinking about all this, because it seems like a lot too, and I know it's not meant to be, oh, you have to be perfect on every one of those on a daily basis. But I'm curious, not that someone would follow this, but like, what is your routine like?
Yeah. So my routine is just what kind of works for me. And I would just say, understand the principles behind it, that you don't have to do everything. My thought process is first we create our habits, then our habits create us, right? That if you want to win the day, you have to win that morning. And so there's certain things that I do, and you don't have to do everything, but maybe test it out for yourself, because ultimately the person that's listening to this is their own expert. The way I've designed it is, Tim Ferriss has his, and Oprah has hers, and Tony has his. Mine is about getting my brain set, since that's, I want to get my mind right. And my prerequisite is it doesn't take a lot of time. So you could do this even if you have kids, you could do it with your kids, and it doesn't take time. It actually helps you to almost make time and make up time in productivity and performance. So simple things in no specific order. I'll wake up and I'll just take 2 minutes and just write down my dreams. Mary Shelley created Frankenstein in her dreams. Paul McCartney created the song Yesterday in his dream. A chemist created the periodic table in his dream. Jack Nicklaus came back from a slump by changing his grip in a dream. What are we dreaming about? But we're forgetting. So I have like a journal right on my nightstand. I just take 2 minutes, write down my dreams. And I find every week there's gold there. And I just feel like that's, like we spent 20 years of our life sleeping, 3 to 5 years dreaming. Like that's there's a lot of treasure there. Another thing I'll do is I'll make my bed. I've been talking about this for like ever, and a lot of people make their bed, but me, I make it with intention. I make it excellent because I think excellence is a habit, and how we do anything is how we do everything. So maybe we take that excellence into other things like my writing or my work. Next thing I'll do is I'll hydrate. So the thing with habits, and we've had James Clear, Atomic Habits, and BJ Fogg, Tiny Habits on our podcast. So I'm a big fan of their work. The key for habit design is you want to make what's good for you easy and what's bad for you difficult. So for me, I want to hydrate first thing in the morning. So I'll put a glass of water by my nightstand the night before, right? And I'll drink that water, because just staying hydrated will boost your reaction time and thinking speed upwards of 30%, which is a huge lift. Yet we could lose up to a pound of water at night through respiration, perspiration. And so I'll drink that water. I'll also have some probiotics also for my gut health, because I think your gut is your second brain. Then I'll go outside immediately. There was a study done at Appalachian State University and talking about exercise. And they said, when's the best time to exercise? In the morning, afternoon, or evening? They said actually in the morning. And it doesn't have to be your full workout, but those who exercise in the morning actually improve their deep sleep upwards of 75% deeper sleep, which is huge. So I'll go outside. And the reason why I go outside is the sunlight helps to reset your circadian rhythm. It's the most important, probably the most important sleep tip that you could have is getting out in direct sunlight. Even if it's hazy, you'll get the benefit of it, but it has to be outside, not through filtered, because the windows will actually not let all the spectrum through. And so through your eyes is the only part of your brain that's outside your skull, right? That's how you reset your circadian rhythm, is getting daylight first thing in the morning. So when I'm out there, I'll stack and I'll do 3 minutes of exercise. Like I'll jump on the rebounder that I have in the room here, or I'll do some jumping jacks, some calisthenics. That'll be huge. A couple other things that I'll throw into it, and this doesn't take time. Like you could do this with your kids. You could talk about their dreams for a minute or two. You can show them make their bed, right? You could do 2 minutes or 3 minutes of outdoor activity with them. Hydrate. All these things are very simple. 2 more. Brushing your teeth with your opposite hand. I'll recommend that. I'm a big fan.
I like that.
Challenge, because I've been teaching this for 30 years, and I teach people how to use. As your body moves, your brain grooves. It actually stimulates a different part of your brain. But the other reason you do it, it forces you to focus, right, and be present. And I think that's important, because most people, they distract themselves first thing in the morning with their devices, and they wonder why they can't focus throughout the day, right? I have a video on YouTube. It has 37 million views just saying don't touch your phone for 30 minutes in the morning.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, it's because it rewires your brain for distraction. It rewires your brain to react to everything as opposed to proactively, designing your day. So when you're brushing your teeth with your opposite hand, it forces you to focus and you take that focus in other activities. And then I'm a big fan of cold therapy. I met Wim Hof back in 2006, 2007, and speaking at an event in Boston. And, at my home, I have cold plunges and I like cold showers. I don't like it, but I grew up in the Northeast. I've spent cold times, in New York and Chicago and different places, and I'm not a fan of the cold, but it's our teacher, and it helps to lower inflammation in our body. It helps to reset your nervous system, even better than coffee for me. And going back to our original conversation, it's training you to do difficult things first thing in the morning. And I feel like grit, like resilience, is a muscle, and it's a way of exercising that and being comfortable, becoming uncomfortable. And then when you have to have that difficult conversation at work or, with your family or you terminate somebody or whatever, it's like, or speak on stage, it shows up, in those emotional muscles. So those are just like 6 or 7 things that I do in the morning, not time consuming at all. Even taking a cold shower probably take you less time, so you save time there. But the big thing is don't touch your phone the last 30 minutes of the day and the first 30 minutes of the day, if you could help it. I would challenge actually everybody who's listening or watching this, you take a screenshot of this episode, wherever you're consuming it, tag us both on social media and see if you're up to this challenge of not touching your phone. And just because again, if you're picking up your phone out of just habit and boredom, then it's using us, right? And I would say that it's very liberating for me, for me, when I wake up, I won't touch my phone until I come up with 3 things I want to accomplish personally and professionally that day. Like I'll fast forward. I'll literally do this thought experiment while I'm in bed. I'll fast forward and then just say, at the end of the day, if my family asked me how my day was, I was like, today was amazing. And then I'll say, okay, what had to happen in order for me to feel that way? Okay, here are 3 things personally, not big things. Maybe I went for a 20-minute walk with our dogs, right? But it was just like something that would give me joy. And, 3 things professionally, because we're not going to do the 300 things on our to-do list. Nobody does that. But if I just accomplish these 3 things, I'll have joy, and I'll work off of those 6 things. That would be my focus throughout the day. Because it's not even about time management. It's about priority management, right? The most important thing is to give the most important thing the most important thing, right? And really it's about, like Dr. Stephen Covey talks about, putting first things first.
Have you ever thought of creating your own calendar and every day is like a saying or a quote?
We could do that. Yeah. Have it like a daily quickism or something.
A quick quote.
Yeah, quick quotes. I mean, I have those quotes all over my office and even on my computer because not just mine, but I mean, just other people's, because it's, I don't know, there's a certain, and I'd be curious actually. So take a screenshot of this, tag us both, and let us know if you're going to do this kind of challenge with your phone, or share your favorite quote. I love quotes, so I always need some good ones.
The challenge, I'll tag you because I need to do that too.
Yeah,
it's like that is something I struggle with because of work stuff, and I mean, there's a million reasons, right? The reality is, I wake up at 5:30 to work out. I don't need to look at my phone.
Yeah,
it's just a habit. Like I tell myself that lie, but it's something I need to work on too. So.
A lot of people say it depletes them. Like even having at the dinner table, having the phone, even if it's face down. Simon Sinek talks about the stress it creates, the anxiety of just having to reach for it, right. And how we're not present with the people that, we're with. And again, I love technology. It's a tool for us to use, but if it's using us, then we become the tool. And I would say that technology is there to make our life more convenient. But if we're doing it out of habit or out of boredom, I think we should manage that.
So I have 2 more quick things because I know we gotta roll in a second here. One is I'm looking at all these books. I read a lot of books too, nowhere near as many as you read. How do you recall the key points of the books when you're looking at, I don't know, how many books are here? There's thousands. There's a lot of books. Yeah. So like, how do you recall the key points of them and retain them for later in your life?
That's great. So reading is a skill. And for most people, the last time we upgraded that skill, took a class called reading, we were like, 6 years old, 7 years old. So it's the difficulty and demand has increased, but how we read it is the same. So that growing gap creates a lot of stress. And I think a lot of people are, I bet, who are listening to this are really good at buying books, but they sit on your shelf and it becomes shelf help, not self-help. And because their skill in buying a book is not the same skill level of reading that book. And we do the things that are just, we're good at, right? And if we're not good at reading, if reading puts us to sleep or we forget what we read or we can't focus and our mind distracts us, then we're probably not going to do it often. Just like if you're not, I'm not a great golfer, so I don't spend a lot of time, on the greens because it's just not that fun for me, right? So I would say upgrade your reading skill. How can you do that specifically? Well, we teach different techniques and we've done multiple podcast episodes. I actually put a link in my Instagram to a free masterclass on speed reading. So people could, no charge, could just bring a book online and go through it.
It works like instantly too.
It's amazing. By going through it on average, people will improve 50%, which is amazing. Just saving an extra 20 minutes on every hour.
In 2 lessons, like 50%.
It's incredible, right? And that's the thing. That's the growth we could have because we haven't been trained in decades. But quick tip is just even two things to do. Number one, if you want greater speed, use your finger while you read. We know that when you use a visual pacer and you underline the words, it'll boost your focus and your speed. And that focus will boost your comprehension because our eyes are attracted to motion. And so when we're underlining the words with a pen, a highlighter, a mouse on a computer, our finger, our eyes are being pulled through the information because visual focus leads your mental focus. All right. The second thing I would say that would help you retain a lot more of what you read in these books is ask better questions. Most people, when they read, they don't have anywhere near as many questions in terms of what they're looking to get out of the outcome of reading that book. And questions are the answer. Meaning, there's part of your brain called the reticular activating system, RAS, which determines what you're aware of, what you concentrate on. So, for example, years ago, my sister, I talk about this in the book, would send me postcards and emails about a specific kind of dog, a pug dog, right? A very docile, little dog that you could dress up and, do whatever. But I started seeing these pug dogs everywhere all of a sudden, right? And my question is, where were these pug dogs before? They were always there, but I never paid attention because it wasn't important to me. So once I started asking the question, like, why is she sending me all these pictures? Because her birthday was coming up, right? Then I started seeing them everywhere. Well, the answers are always there. And so when you start reading and you start asking more questions, you're reading through it, and then all of a sudden there's a pug dog, that's comprehension, right? So we're pulled through the information as opposed to our attention being pulled apart, thinking about like things that are going to distract us. But my 3 questions I ask all the time when I'm learning something, even listening to a podcast like yours, how can I use this? I'm obsessed with that question. So I start getting answers. Number 2, why must I use this? So it goes from my head to my heart because you want to get those emotions there because if I don't have a reason, I won't get the reward. And then the 3rd question I ask, when will I use this? So it goes to my head, to my heart, to my hands, like in terms of scheduling. Because if it's not, the truth is we schedule doctor's appointments, investor meetings, client calls, but when do we schedule like our own growth? Like a lot of people, they won't work out, not because they're lazy, it's just they don't schedule it. And then the whole day escapes them and they're like, oh, I should have worked out today or I should have meditated, But I think for every hour people listen to a podcast like yours, they need to get in the habit of saying, okay, I'm going to spend an equal hour implementing what I learned from that. And because the truth is, all the books, I was going to say tapes to kind of date me, all the books and podcasts and conferences, none of it works unless we work, right? And that's the key is to take knowledge is not power, it's potential power. It becomes power when we apply it, And so all your listeners and all the people that amazing people that attend your events, I would say that we do ourselves a disservice by reading something and not implementing it, because then you're no better off than somebody who's illiterate, right? And so that's the goal. Those who can learn and then translate that learning into action they'll lead the field.
Yeah. Otherwise, they're ideas, right? And they're ideas in your brain, and who doesn't have ideas? So you just get...
There's so many ideas, but very few implementers.
All right, last thing, because I know we got to roll, but I promised Morgan I'd ask you this question.
Yes, let's do it.
So Morgan is my 11-year-old daughter, and she's a student of Kwik Brain. She asked me, what would you tell your younger self?
Oh, that's a
What
great,
advice would you give
that's a
your younger
great
self?
question, Morgan. There are two people that I want to make proud in my life. And most people, when I say that, will think of parents. But for me, I want to make the 90-year-old version, the 90-year-old me proud, and the 9-year-old me proud. Looking back at that 9-year-old boy, he was labeled broken. It's hard to think about it, but the one that was just wanted to run away and just not be seen. I want to make that boy proud, and then I want to make fast forward to that 90-year-old version of me proud also. And so I would say to the 9-year-old boy that that you're not broken, that you are enough. The other thing I would say is that I don't know if the 9-year-old version of me would get this, but that you are 100% responsible for your life. That your circumstances, your environment, other people's expectations, your experiences might have shaped you who you are, but you have choice who you're going to be today and who you're going to be moving forward. When I talk about responsibility, you saw in my office, I have this art from Stan Lee on the wall, different in almost in a lot of my rooms. And Stan is the creator of all of my favorite superheroes that are also in my room. And I got to spend time with him and go to dinner. And I asked him in the car, "Who's your favorite superhero that you've created?" And he says it's Iron Man, and he signed that Iron Man for me in the corner there. And then I said, "Jim, who's your favorite superhero?" And I said, "Spider-Man." And without a pause, in his iconic voice, he goes, "With great power comes great responsibility." And truth be told, I reverse things a bunch, maybe because my traumatic brain injury, when I hear something or when I read it still, and I heard something different. I was like, you're right. With great power comes great responsibility. And the opposite is also true. With great responsibility comes great power. When we take responsibility for something, we have great power to make things better. So Morgan, I would say to my 9-year-old self is that you're doing fine and you are responsible for your life, good, better, or indifferent. And, that these difficult times, they could define you. These difficult times, they could diminish you, or these difficult times, they could develop you. We always decide.
Wow, what great insights and advice to leave this wonderful conversation with. Thank you, Jim, so much for your time. Can't wait to see you in December at Refuel. For those of you who are watching and listening, Jim's going to be there in Naperville.
Cannot
live.
wait.
And we're going to get into some of these techniques, I'm sure, and just a lot more. But man, I really am honored to have had this time with you today. And again, you've been an inspiration to me, and it's just been incredible to get to know you more.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. And I just want to thank you for not only what you do, but also the manner you do it. I haven't done podcasts here in my home. I do my own podcasts, but that's a real treat for me to be on the receiving end because normally it's a little different. But I would say I look forward to seeing everybody at Refuel. And if you are going to screen capture this, tag us and put a link because if you got any value out of what you heard, I think the best way of learning something is to teach it. And so if you post it, I'll actually, if you tag me, I'll get to see it and I'll repost it and I'll actually gift a copy of Limitless to one person just as a thank you, And so, I really do believe this is the quote that gets shared the most, that life is like an egg, that if an egg is broken by an outside force, life ends. But if it's broken by an inside force, life begins. Great things begin on the inside.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this still, then you have greatness inside of you already. And that's where it starts. You have greatness and genius. And I think we're all on this quest to reveal and realize our fullest potential, and so that's really the goal, is to keep showing up for ourselves. But amazing.
Well, thank you, my friend.
Thanks, Joe.